Hello and welcome to Dominion Menagerie bonus previews. So, as I mentioned yesterday, and as you may have seen in the Discord, Donald X has decided to continue on with the Menagerie previews until the set is released. Or I think he said until the set is released or a rulebook is made available. Anyway, so we're going to be getting these once per day, or sorry, one card or card-shaped thing per day previews for at least a little while. And the first of these is Way of the Chameleon. So this is one of the new ways that you can play in lieu of playing and your action normally. You can choose to play the way instead. And in this case, what you do is follow this card's instructions, where this card refers to the action that you are choosing to play as Way of the Chameleon. And then each time that would give you plus cards this turn, you get plus coins instead, and vice versa. Okay, so this I think can be a little hard to parse. At least I had trouble. So I'm going to go back through this. What this is referring to is when the action that you are playing using Way of the Chameleon gives you plus cards this turn, so not like as a duration effect or, you know, as like a, I don't know, something from the reserve mat or any kind of other, like, you know, thing that happens outside of the scope of this turn, just this turn. The example Donald X gave was Merchant Ship. Merchant Ship would give you cards this turn and coins next turn. Anyway, so each time it would give you cards this turn, you get coins instead, and each time you would get coins this turn, you get cards instead. And this is all only applicable to the card that's being played using Way of the Chameleon. And I found that a little bit confusing just because the way it's worded with this turn, at first I was thinking, wait, does Way of the Chameleon, like you activate it and now it applies to all the other actions that you play for the rest of the turn? And no, it doesn't. This is, so you have, as with the other ways, you have complete flexibility on this in terms of, you know, which, if any, do I want to use this with? So that seems pretty crazy to me. It's really hard to evaluate, but certainly the ability to do this, you know, whenever you want and only when you want is very nice. The closest thing I can think of to draw an analogy to is Storyteller. Like, you can kind of turn a lot of your payload cards into something more similar to Storyteller, where you're turning the coins into draw. Although, unlike Storyteller, obviously you can't play treasures, and it doesn't consume any existing coins that you already have. So, you know, it's like the best case scenarios for Storyteller usually involve drawing large numbers of cards by, you know, doing something like playing a gold, or, you know, or not just one gold, but like a couple golds, like you know, where you're drawing, you know, like 6 or more cards, kind of similar to Apprentice. You can just, like, you know, consume some of your economy in order to draw like crazy amounts of cards. You're not generally going to do that with this, outside of, you know, there are a few cards that we've seen in this set that have like a fair amount of plus coin in them. So I'm thinking of Animal Fair in particular. But I guess there's also quite a few that give you +3 as opposed to +4. Hey, you can turn Death Cart into a really strong draw card. So yeah, I mean, but even if you have like, let's say, you know, that you have a card like Grand Market, right, which is giving you, already is like a cantrip that gives you a buy-in +2 coins, and you're like, you know, I really don't have any draw cards in my deck. It's just like a Grand Market stack, and you want to skip over some stop cards that you either need or couldn't get rid of or whatever. You can have a couple of your Grand Markets draw 3 cards instead of 1 card. right? That could be, that could be super good, even if you're not doing it with most or all of your grand markets, even if you're just doing it with a couple of them, or even like a regular market, turning it into a lab, a plus buy lab, like that's pretty good. So I'm just talking about cases where right now where you would want to turn coins into cards, but what about cases where you want to turn cards into coins? I assume that's going to be less common, but I can certainly see, you have some overdraw that you can't really take advantage of this turn, or you don't want to trigger a shuffle, so you just you play your smithy as a terminal gold. I mean, that's not like, terminal gold is in general not like a super strong effect, but if your choice is between terminal gold and terminal do nothing, or trigger a bad shuffle, I think you'll take the terminal gold and be very happy about it. I mean, again, having flexibility, having options is pretty much always good, even if you don't make use of them. Knowing that you have them available, that to change up what you're doing in case something goes wrong, in case you have a dud or whatever. So like I could imagine that happening, right, where you have like, let's say that you have some kind of, you have a deck that I mean, I guess I'm really just thinking of more like shuffle triggering things, where you have a deck that has I'm trying to think of an example of this. There are decks where you have a high risk that like duds cascade, basically, because you're reliant on some kind of like duration effect or something, where if you don't get your durations in play, then you dud next turn, and then that means that you don't find more of your durations, which means you dud the following turn, stuff like that. And I'm thinking that like in that kind of scenario, like you if like it's really important that you get like 3 wharves in play every turn or something, and you're like, oh well, what do I want to do about playing this terminal wharf? I might draw more of the wharves that I haven't seen in this shuffle dead. So this isn't about triggering a shuffle, it's just about like the expectation that you're going to draw cards dead. You can play the wharf for plus coins this turn, plus cards next turn. You still get the duration effect, but you don't have to worry about drawing cards dead. I could even see that being useful with a card like Warrior or Witch early game, where I mean, most of the time with Witch you want to draw the cards because you want to get back to your Witch sooner. But again, like if you're worried about triggering a shuffle, or if you know that you have like another one in your next hand, if you're playing Warrior and you're like, oh, I don't want to draw my champion, that kind of thing, you can just cancel out the draw and get plus coins. And that's most of the cases where I would think that converting cards into coins would be useful, is cases where you don't you don't want to draw the cards because you're going to trigger a shuffle, or you want to like leave cards on top of your deck, like that sort of thing. I don't really I don't know. I mean, I guess there could also be cases where you build like a low deck control deck with like Embassy or something like that, and you just say, okay, I've got a gold in hand and I've got an Embassy. I'll just play the Embassy for plus 5 coins. Discard. You still have to discard 3 cards, right? So it's like plus 5 coins, discard 3 cards. Now I've gotten the Embassy, 5 coins from Embassy plus the gold. That's 8 by province. Boom, done. Right? Like there's going to be some situations where like the math works out that way, and you can just do that and know that you hit your price point, rather than having to draw into the cards that let you hit your price point. So that could also be relevant. Anyway, all right, I'd like to wrap this up because there's only one card and I've already been talking for almost 10 minutes, but this thing is crazy. It's really hard. It's really hard to evaluate, like, and to think about all the different situations in which this like might be useful. I tend to think just because of the flexibility that this is the most powerful way, like the most powerful way that we've seen, and maybe by a significant margin. But I'm not confident in that at all. I just think that, like, whenever I see like an effect like this, you know, I'm like, oh man, this must be powerful. But we kind of, I feel like we, the Dominion community, kind of felt that way about capitalism when it debuted, and it turned out to not actually be that strong most of the time. But I don't know. My money is still on this is going to be quite strong. Anyway, thank you for watching, and I'll see you again tomorrow for another one of these bonus previews. Until then.